Good morning, Bridge Dental Podcast listeners. This is Steve Kuza, your host, your resident financial advisor. Super excited. Little crosstalk host with me today, Dr. David Rice. Dr. Rice, how you doing this morning?
I am excellent. How are you?
I'm doing really well, really well. So for those of you who don't know Dr. David Rice, and I think a lot of you do, he's a co-founder of Ignite, and we're going to talk a lot about that. And he's very influential in the dental community from beginning dentist all the way through to tenured dentist. So Dr. Rice, I'm super excited to have you today. And let's get right to it. Let's get to the people hearing what they need to hear. For those of you listening, we're going to drive a lot of discussion around Dr. Rice's mission, but we want to catch up a little bit on his story to get us started. So Dr. David Rice, tell us where you're coming from today, and let's land the plane for the Bridge Dental Podcast listeners.
You bet. So I am hailing out of Tampa, Florida, which is home for me. Grateful to be home. I'm on the road a bunch. People ask me where I live. Tampa is what I say, but it usually means Marriott anywhere North America. So happy to be coming to you from my home right now. And gosh, my story in a nutshell, I went from dental student to resident to associate to solo owner, partner in one location, partner in 4 locations, full circle back to associate. And all of that by design, thankfully, over the course of 29 years. I shouldn't be able to say that number out loud, but that's the 30,000 foot view.
Well, so you are back to being an associate, correct? Today.
Yes.
But on this journey, you went from like you said, associate to owning multiple practices. And you seem to have multiple brands right now. So dentist is obviously one of them. I feel like dentist is just what you do, but you happen to be a dentist, but I feel like you're doing so many other things. So talk about a little bit about the current status of Ignite and what Ignite is.
Absolutely. So you're right. I went from dentist being my, job and Ignite DDS being a passion project to the opposite. I practice only now a week every other month. And the focus is Ignite DDS, where we really, if I shorten it to the super tight phrase, we help dentists build their self-determined future. So many people I meet, especially in today's world with all the social media, they're so focused on everybody else's success that I think we too often try to live somebody else's success, which is unsuccessful and unfulfilling, that we don't want to define it for anyone else. We help people discover what it is they want out of their life. And then we have, a recipe depending on which track they want to follow and how they want to practice, whether it's single location ownership, being an associate forever, owning multiple locations, whatever that looks like. We have playbooks for every lane, and we walk dentists through those playbooks. So in short order, they can have whatever life they'd like to live. That's Ignite in a nutshell. And, we have a lot of free content that we run on our website. We do a lot on social media to communicate with people, kind of meet people where they are. But when we dive deep, we're building people's self-determined futures.
That's pretty powerful. I like that phrase a lot, self-determined futures. So I'm almost imagining you help a dentist become who they want to be, who they should become. You help them realize their potential, not a peer-to-peer comparison. That's so true in all aspects of life, and probably including your industry, that you seem to like, let me just watch and do what that person's doing, which is not a bad model sometimes, but you get caught up in the game and you're living a life you didn't even want to live. So did this come about? Did you have a self-realization moment personally, or was it a coaching thing that happened to you in the beginning of your career? How did that, I guess, where did your self-determined future come from?
Yeah, super question. I think I'm probably like most people. I evolved over time. When I first came out of dental school, I really had one mission. I wanted to be the greatest clinical dentist I could be. And I poured my heart and soul into really high level continuing education. I love complete care. I love beautiful front teeth. That's the dentistry that I've done for, multiple decades, day in and out. And then one day I saw a brilliant clinician slash speaker named David Hornbrook. And David took me under his wing, and I made multiple trips from East Coast to West Coast and worked with him with a program called Pack Live that he used to run. He no longer runs.
Okay.
And that changed the way I looked at dentistry. And then I met another guy named Steve Anderson, who became a great mentor of mine. And that changed the way I looked at dentistry in my life. And, one day I woke up realizing I was living largely somebody else's life. And it was sort of happy, but not ultimately happy. And
that's a powerful moment. And was that, I don't, you have to give me the exact year that was, but what stage of your career was that? Because I want to hold that moment. It's like, when did you come to that realization? Was this when you owned a practice? Were you still an associate at the time?
So I owned a practice. It was in my first year of ownership.
Okay.
Which, if you do the math on my life, I didn't just snap my fingers and get to the life I really dreamt of. I built it over time and, sort of strategically said, how am I going to plug elements that really make me happy in, unplug elements that make me unhappy, and then ultimately get to the place that I wanted to be, which is here in Tampa, Florida. Because those of you who do know me know my practice is in Western New York. So it's a bit of a commute when I go there.
So let's go back. Let's put a bookmark on that. And I want to go back to this self-realization moment. And you were somewhat happy. You probably were excited. Good things were starting to happen.
Absolutely.
What changed for you, or what changed the vision for you a little bit?
So I'll tell you, it's a sad story, but it's got a really great ending.
Okay.
I was a new owner. I had a young associate whose name was Mark. I met him while I was teaching part-time at Buffalo's dental school. So we had a relationship. We knew each other prior to him joining our team. And it wasn't more than, 6, 7, 8 months in, and his 27-year-old wife died a week after their first baby was born.
Oh.
And that shocked my system, both for what Mark was going to have to go through, the things we did as a team to help Mark, but I think more importantly, just to realize nothing is promised.
Right.
And oh my gosh, I'm doing all these things for other people. I need to include myself and my vision in that, or whether I'm alive till I'm, 40, 50, or 90, I'm not going to be happy.
That is a powerful moment, a profound moment. And you came through the other side of that with a different type of, I don't want to call it respect, but gratefulness, and then also dedication to your own vision. And where did that take you next as far as your professional career was concerned?
Sure. It's, we did two things. I stopped teaching at Buffalo's dental school. That was number one. I needed to focus on being at the practice more so Mark could stay home until he was ready to come back. And that led me to scaling the dental side, the practice side. So from 1 location to 2 to 3 to 4, we did a couple acquisitions. We did a startup together. And then also while doing that, I missed teaching. I love working with people. I love coaching people. But I decided I could never do that in a formal academic arena anymore because I could get handcuffed and feel the way I felt. So I started to, behind the curtain, conceptualize this thing called Ignitedds. It didn't have a name. Probably for 4 or 5 years, it was more of a study club that was local to Buffalo, New York, the Western New York region. And then, one day we realized, wow, we have critical mass that could scale too. So how do those two play together? What do I love more? Who are the people I need on each team to make all that possible?
And as you were starting to scale the education side up, and not through the academic side in the traditional academic sense, but the future Ignite, it was a drive for part of your passion. So that was part of it. You liked mentoring and coaching. What was the drive behind that? What were you seeing young dentists I'm assuming you were coaching at the time, maybe graduating dentists, et cetera, maybe associates and business owners. But what did you see them missing or potentially that they needed help with?
Yeah, a few things. And interestingly enough, this spans like all ages of dentists.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
I
sure.
thought it was just going to be young people, but I found out it was absolutely mid-career and even end of career. I thought, three basic buckets. Financially, people were making really bad choices.
Mm.
Things that felt good, maybe even things like mom or dad or an advisor who didn't necessarily quite understand where they wanted to go. They were following the advice, just wasn't the best advice.
Sure.
Well intentioned, maybe. They didn't have any systems in
Mm.
place. So something that worked really, really well on Monday could go sideways on Tuesday and sort of worked on Wednesday. So, that was a big issue. And then even, clinical dentistry, I think if we're all honest with ourselves, dental school gives us a very solid foundation, but that's all it gives us. And I, as a young dentist, personally experienced, I had no idea like what was possible. So we wanted to expose people to all the possibilities and say, hey, you don't have to love it. You don't have to do it. You should know it's out there. And then we help them on the money side, just again, connect with the right people, understand some of the choices they were making and the impact that would happen later, and then how to build systems to drive their success.
And I want to talk to you a little about that for a second. I feel like sometimes, let's just use the associate who's ready to buy a practice.
Sure.
It's almost like one day they go home, and this is my outside view looking in. So you're more in it. But I feel like one day they go home from being an associate and they're like, you know what, I should either partner or how do I get equity in this practice? And if it's not the case where I can get equity, they kind of have this realization moment. It's like, all right, I can't drive. Dr. Rice is not retiring anytime soon. I got to go find my own thing. And it's almost like it happens really fast. And they all of a sudden own a practice, but they don't, to your point, it's like, I don't feel like they have the vetted relationships or have not, and I'm generalizing right now. I mean, some have done it in a slower process, but I feel like they kind of just go to it almost because it feels like the right next step. Do you see that on your end when you're coaching or you're first introduced in that sense?
I do. I sort of feel like it's people who've dated each other for a long time. Oh, we're just supposed to be married. Well, maybe, but maybe not.
Right.
And you're right. I think young dentists sort of go along, and then one day wake up and say, today's the day I need to make a move. And then the problem with that is there was no preparation prior to that. So it takes time to actually check all the boxes that lenders want and to get ready. And then either to identify a practice they can acquire or to identify space that they can, start up. And, it becomes a panic button and this crazy urgency, and then emotion kicks in, and the first practice they find they fall in love with, and maybe it's not the best practice, or the first space, if they're going to do a startup, they fall in love with, and maybe that's not the best space. So for all the right reasons, we as young dentists make, all the wrong choices and get ourselves deeper in the hole.
And it's out of drive for the passion of dentistry. So the funny part is it's all for the right cause.
Yep.
And patient care, and I want to do it this way, and I want to become this type of dentist for the community. And then, but there's a whole business angle that could derail that.
Very true. Very true.
Do you feel so when you think about Ignite and where your organization comes into play? How could you, if I'm that dentist who wakes up one day and says, man, I got to change what's going on in my life or in my professional career, how do you guys integrate, or how do you guys help through that process? And I love the playbook, that piece that you mentioned. And that's what I wanted to come back to, because it's not like you guys have a franchise. It's just, all dentists are independent, most of them. All right, they're independent. I'm going to do my thing, you do your thing, and your personality, and that's how you're going to run your practice. So you're essentially giving this script. Hey, use your personality, but here's a script to follow so you don't go off the rails. Is that I'm overgeneralizing that, but is that somewhat what you guys are doing?
Sure. Yeah. It in a very stepwise fashion. So just. For instance, you want to go out there and buy a practice, there's some steps you need to take. And the chronology of those steps turns out can be either helpful or harmful, just in delaying the process. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, God, I want to buy a practice, or hey, I want to build a practice. Once you've made that decision, what you need to know is every month that goes by where that's not happening costs you more money. So if you have a recipe and you know the right ingredients in the right sequence with the right dose, like the chocolate cake turns out pretty damn good every time. And if you mix and match, or you take out whole milk and put in skim milk, like all of a sudden that cake doesn't taste very good anymore. So we essentially do that. We give the steps and the chronology, and then I'll tell you one thing we do different from other coaches, because I've had some really good coaches in my career.
Sure.
But the one thing that I felt they all fell short on, and I know why, they gave me the playbook and said, okay, go do it. And they helped, and I understood it. They did a really good job helping me understand it. But they never really held my hand through part of it until they knew I was ready. And I think, again, admission on my part is we dentists can get stuck really easily.
Sure.
And then we tend to not ask questions because we're so afraid somebody's going to think we don't know the answer to a question that we should know the answer to.
Right.
So we stall and nothing good happens. So we walk people through all of those steps, literally till somebody green lights us, our team, and says like, I got it. I'm ready. That to me is powerful. I don't ever want anyone we work with to feel like I'm not entirely sure what I'm supposed to do right now or why.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really big piece of coaching that often gets missed.
It's such a transferable thought process. When you think through that, it's, I could work out on my own. I could be my own nutritionist. I could do my own financial advising. It's like, but, we only do so many things well. And then all of a sudden you want to build a dental practice all on your own. But it's like, if you could partner up with the right people, and that could be in any part of your life, right? It could be on the dental practice side. It could be, in hiring a health coach, a fitness coach, whatever. You tend to start to make some progress because it's measured. You have accountability. And it doesn't even have to be crazy intense. It's just checking in. So that's really cool. I think that could be such a huge thing for, dentists, I just think as business owners, it could be such a big thing for business owners to have a vision too. And you mentioned vision a couple of times. And even before we even jumped on, you're like, and I had the vision to sell my practice and it sold, right before COVID. Are you a big vision guy? Is that a big part of your life? Do you draw this thing out ahead of time?
I do. In fact, I wrote a book called "Is Everyone Smiling But You?" that, wow, turns out is an Amazon bestseller in like 5 categories. Crazy. Who thought? But it starts with the vision, and then it gets to, how you build a culture of character, who you need to do it, and then all the steps, just sort of life in general. It's not necessarily a dental book, but it's very dentally applicable.
Sure.
But, listen, if you don't know where you want to go, how did Yogi Berra said? If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. Yogi Berra was like, for those of you who are way younger to know who Yogi Berra is, he was a baseball player and he was known for saying like the silly, obvious things in life. But that's so true. If you don't know where you want to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, you have no shot of getting there. People get hung up on it because, well, what if I change my mind? That's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
You always change your mind,
right.
but you need a plan to get someplace. And then if you want to change the destination, go ahead and change it.
That is so true. I've had countless conversations over my career and on retirement. People are like, "Well, I'll figure it out." It's like, no, at least let's drive down a road that we think we want to go down. If we got to make a turn, we will. We'll adapt. We'll change. I think the people get scared of committing to the vision.
Yes.
To let themselves down but they have no idea what the power of writing it down or putting it out there. It's like the world starts to form around you, right? Manifest destiny and all those great things. We can go down the cliche thing, but it's so true. And obviously you've experienced that. And towards the end of this thing, we'll jump back because I'm curious where the next vision is for you. But I want to go back to this vision of you selling your practice, and it happened right before COVID, and that wasn't on purpose. It was just this was dialed into your, I think you said 8 to 10 year vision, and you knew exactly when you wanted to sell. Can you almost lead us through that?
Sure. So, Mark and I, and, imagine we grew our team, so we added more dentists later on. But, from the moment that, I'm going to say Mark's life really got shaken up. I mean, I was a part of it, but the pain was his.
Sure.
We started sitting to get down once he came back to the practice and saying, like, what do we want this thing really to look like? And I had to get really honest with him and say, look, I'm not going to be here forever. I love this. I love our team, but it's not going to be a full-time thing for me. So I mapped out an 8-year strategy of how to go from 4 days a week to 3 days a week to 2 days a week to every other week seeing patients.
Wow.
And then COVID hit. So for those of you who don't know, New York hated Florida and Florida hated New York, and they both did things to beat each other up at different points in time. So when, I had sold the practice 7 months pre-COVID, but and as an associate, that really had a fast track Ignite. That was like the X factor. But I was like, listen, I can't come home, every other week like I was doing before. But the game plan was I had to position with Mark the leadership of our practice, so it would be a seamless transfer. Even though Mark and I were partners, we had different roles. He was more of like the steady guy, 9 to 5, keeping the peace. My role was more of decision maker and, visionary, building future. So we had to get to a place where we had another dentist who could be me. So Mark could continue to be Mark and be, fulfill like his happy factor as well as his professional process. So we found Laura as part of that plan. And then Laura knew the day she walked in the door that here's your buy-in. It looks exactly like this. Yeah. We just need to make sure we love you, and you need to make sure you love us. And after that initial dating phase, like, it's already lined up. So Laura, fortunately, was way better than we could have ever imagined. She was amazing.
That's great.
People started seeing Laura, and they gave me the whole, like, nice knowing you, Dave, but we'll see Laura. And, on one side you chuckle, right? Because your ego is like, boy, I wish they liked me a little better. And on the other side, you're like, oh, this is exactly what's supposed to happen.
Right.
So yeah, I sold 7 months pre-COVID. I commuted from Florida to New York on a very regular basis. And then when COVID hit, I had a choice to make, and we all got on a Zoom call and said, hey, are you good? Yep, I'm good. Are you good? Yep, I'm good. All right. Then we're all set till this COVID thing finishes up. And now I head back every other month. Okay. I go back for 3 days. And we have a really interesting financial and, I guess, business relationship on that side too, which is, I think, proof that everything's possible. You just have to lay it out and see how it helps everybody.
And now that you have arrived here today on this podcast and we're talking through this, is it, and you're reflecting on it almost as you're talking about it. Now you've brightened up since we started talking about this vision coming true and it happening. Yeah. And so do you feel that way inside when you talk through that as a sense of, proud of where this actually ended up? You manifested this is how it came to be. And it may have not been every detail you ever wrote, but the structure, you attracted great people to that vision, like Laura, et cetera.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel in general as you talk through it?
So I feel great, but what I don't want those of you who are listening, watching, to take from this is that everything worked out exactly as I planned it.
I'm sure it was.
It did not. Like, if I took a step forward, trust me, there were at least 2 steps backwards, sometimes 3 or 4. I think what makes me so happy is I didn't let the fear get in the way of making the changes that I really wanted in life, because it would have been really easy for me to do what my family and friends said and just be a dentist all darn day. You're pretty good at it. And you have this great practice that's a machine, and you just have to show up, because we built all those systems and we had financial control and we had clinical control. So I think what makes me most happy is I went for it. And, good times, great times, and not so great times, you figure it out when you have the right people in your camp.
Yeah. And I'm sure there were many moments where you're like, what am I doing today?
Oh, yeah.
What did we do?
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes actually the hardest part with the vision is, to your point, other people see it differently. And, we're all human. We get naturally influenced, right? Especially by your people most important to you, and they just want to see the best for you. So then do make comments like, you got a machine. And so you're like, yeah, I do have a machine. Why am I making this decision that it might slow me down financially? It might slow down this other thing, because aren't I just supposed to run till 60 and sell the practice and retire? Shouldn't I just do that?
Yeah.
But I'm sure you had those moments in that 8 to 10 year span.
There's no question. And I'd be lying if I told you I still don't have those moments sometimes. I think that's human nature. And
Sure.
the pivotal piece to that is just acknowledge that is a part of human nature. And you're going to have those moments, no matter how well things are going. That little voice is going to creep inside your head at times and make you question yourself. And that's okay. You just recognize the voice and then logically address what the voice is sharing with you and have a strategic plan. If the voice is pulling you in one direction, to say, was the voice right? Or is the voice wrong? And maybe the voice is just alerting me to something I have to pay more attention to.
Oh, I love that. And you could tell you have the coaching aspect, written in you. So it was
yeah, it's in my DNA.
Yeah, it's in your DNA. You want to lead others. I love that. And so let's switch gears. I want to talk a little bit about Ignite while I have you here. So
yeah,
it looked like an extensive network of dentistry through and through. To your point, you said earlier, like across all age bands, practice types, dentist types. So talk through this extensive network of professionals that I see on your website and through Instagram. And so, yeah, I just was curious of, it's not like an organization that seems like it's top down. It seems like a community. Yeah. That's what I notice.
Yes. And you hit it. I'm glad you noticed that. So thank you for that. It was very important from day one for me. I've never believed in hierarchy. I've never had one in my practice as an owner. I never wanted one for Ignite. So we're very much a community. We have a little north of 26,000 young dentists and students who come to our website every single day. And we reach between 3.5 and 5 million dental professionals at large on social media every single month. And I think, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
That happens for a couple reasons. One, the people who come to us get comfortable. They know they can trust us. If you haven't figured out from hearing me already, you're going to get the truth from me, whether you like it or not. Sometimes it's going to be exactly what you want to hear, and sometimes it isn't. But my promise to everybody is you're going to get the truth, because me sugarcoating something or telling you a story, like, it doesn't serve you. It just holds you back and makes you feel good for a second.
Sure.
That's one. And two is I've met like the most incredible people over the last, decade or so that Ignite's been in existence. And our core team are all young dentists, a couple young dental assistants that I met, some of them as first-year dental students, some as second years, some maybe right after they graduated. So, collectively, we do great things. And, as a leader, one of the things I've learned is past the vision, like most of my job is just getting out of the way and letting people do what they're so incredibly good at. I can't take, literally, I take maybe 1% of the credit for the reach we have on social media. I just do what I'm told from our young dentists who are like, I need you to do this. Well, okay.
I love that.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Well, that's the magical part of the vision. When you can, I don't want to say delegate to others, when you can surround yourself with great people.
Yeah.
When you get to to steal a line from one of my favorite books, when you can get to the who's, not how to do everything yourself, that's where the vision becomes magical. And it seems like that's a space you're in right now. It's you're just continuing to build the who's of your vision, and not necessarily you doing it all, if that's accurate or not. But
it's very accurate. And I love the distinction you made. For me, it's not so much delegation as it is, we're at a place now where we attract the who's.
Yeah.
And we know where to best position them because of the talent that they bring to the table. And sometimes we meet who's, and we already have great who's in that spot. And then we just have to be honest with them and say, like, hey, we kind of have this minor role for you, but we have great people here. So if you'd like to help us with these things, we'd love to work with you. And if you need more than that, like, we'll be here as a sounding board, but we can't promise you more than that. And I think dentists, especially, we want to be everybody's best friend. Like, that's a hurdle we all have to get over of people. Like, just be honest with people. You can be nice and honest at the same time, and it all works out.
Right. There's a way to give feedback, be transparent, and help people constructively.
Yep.
And so, yeah, man, and people take it as criticism when you don't have a relationship. That's the careful part. But when you're in a community, regardless of relationship, if you're in a community of educating and learning, if people come to Ignite to learn and be coachable, then that's the different story, right? You give them the feedback, then you move on, but it's because they're there to learn. So that's the great part about what I like, what you're bringing up and what you're talking through. You have a community of dentists and professionals abroad that are coming to be coached, so it's not starting with someone who's uncoachable. They're coming in coachable, which could be really powerful for them, especially with some of the work that you're doing. Is it just, you talked about this book and you threw in that, hey, I got an Amazon bestseller out there, but we got a book, we got Ignite. Ignite is pretty robust. So I don't mean, when I say, is there anything else? do you have time for anything else that you have going on and how you're impacting, whether it's dental community or abroad?
Sure. Dental community, I do work with DentistryIQ. I'm their chief editor, which really takes like this much time. It takes a few hours a week. I love it because of the people who are there. Okay. It's a more seasoned dental professional community. So it sort of rounds out Ignite, which leans youthful. That completes, I would say, the life cycle of a dentist. And, beyond that, honestly, I love being home with my wife, our dog, and, we're really blessed. We live by the water. We're both water people. And if you said, like, what am I going to do every morning that I'm home? First thing when I get up, I'm going to go for a 5-mile walk. Yeah. With our family. And that's a great way to start our day. And it's a great reminder of, like, why I do all the work things, because the work stuff is amazing, but there's got to be more to that. Or, the day you quote retire, you become really unhappy again.
And that's a direct transferable link to what I do for a living. That is very true. If you can't start to position yourself to be happy in your whatever age you are, I don't care if you're 30 or 58, you're not all of a sudden going to click a happy button when I'm not working. Work is part of our journey. It's part of what we do. It's our identity. That's why people continue to work, because they don't know how to be happy outside of work. So I love what you just said. I think that's really powerful to discover. And you obviously committed to it. You're willing to fly back and forth. You may have changed my vision. I'm going to start, you just expanded my thinking on, hey, how I can set this up in the future. So I love that. Where's the next 3 years? How about, let's do short-term vision. Where's the next three years for you? Next 2 to 3 years. What's in the vision for that?
Sure. The next 3 years, on the Ignite side, we scale this coaching element. We've always done it. We've never really talked about it, but we've actually, hard launched it. So we're going to grow that. Our goal is to work with 100 dentists a year. Okay. Over the next 3 years. And then on the personal side of the next 3 years, it's shrink my travel from, say, 40 plus trips a year down to 25 trips a year.
Right. I'm sure you love flying, but let's slow it down a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's funny, right? I've always looked at an airplane like being in a car. If I can get someplace in 2 hours, it's just like living in a major, city and having to commute. But being home more is definitely on the agenda.
Well, I love the focus on direct impact, 100 dentists per year. And so if I'm a young dentist or any dentist, really, I'm assuming it crosses the age band, So even if I'm a 50-year-old dentist, I've been in practice for 20 years, looking to recreate what I'm doing. Maybe the practice grew a little stale. That would also be someone you guys would coach or bring on. Okay. How do I reach out? Now you guys have launched this, correct?
Correct.
How do I get in touch with you guys to see if we're a good fit?
Sure. So a few easy ways. Pick the one that helps you most. You can email me. It's my name, david.rice@ignitedds.com. If you are an Instagrammer, just go to @ignitedds and send me a message. And if you want to take a little deeper look at things, go to ignitedds.com. It'll show you what we do. And yeah, I'm a big fan. If you're a new kid on the block, get out of the gate and do it well. If you've been doing this for a while and you feel like you're stuck, we can get you unstuck fast. And if you're thinking about retiring, oh my God, this might be even more important for you than anyone else. You've built your whole life around creating this epic investment. You should maximize what you get for it on the way out. And when you have the right people and the right process and the right production, I've yet to meet a practice we couldn't grow, at least 40% in 6 months.
Wow.
So get those things in line. So when you go to a practice broker and sell this, whether you sell it to a single David Rice or a group, you have to be strategic, because the people on the other side, they are strategic.
Correct. Yeah. They know what they're looking for.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we'll put those points of contact in our show notes, of course. And as we're kind of dialing this down, and we got kind of your next 3-year look, and we might catch you between airports. We'll see, when you're traveling. Tell us anything else you want to give. I guess the suggestion or feedback to people who are kind of listening to this. They're in their car and like, man, I really don't know my next step. My encouragement would be reach out and check out Dr. David Rice. But any words of encouragement to get out of the so-called rut that sometimes we all naturally fall in, right? We have a tough week, a tough month. Sometimes that could lead to a tough 3 months. But someone who's in a rut who wants to make this change that we've been talking about, David, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say 3 really fast things. First, you're not alone. You're not the first person to be in this rut. You will not be the last person to be in this rut. So don't worry about it. Second, yes, reach out. We do like 20-minute sessions. They're complimentary. If I'm not a good fit for you, again, the truthful David will tell you, I'm not a good fit. Here's a list of people who might be, or you're not actually ready to work with anyone. Go get right with yourself. Those 2. And then the third piece, which I think is really important, is reality in life is you're on one of 2 paths in their trajectories. So you're either moving in an upward trajectory and you're doing all the right things that are working, or you're moving in the wrong trajectory and your habits are pulling you in the wrong direction, which means 6 months from today, if you're on the wrong path, you're further away from where you want to be. So the concept of waiting 6 months or a year or 2 years till the kids get a little older, or this happens or that happens, it's flawed, and you're going to be further away from where you want to go. So if you can pass the mirror test and you feel like everything's going well, keep doing it. And if you can't, hop on a call for 20 minutes and figure out what's the best next step for you, even if it's just a conversation that might be enough to help you do some of the things you need to do.
Well, I love that. And so if you're listening to this, that's just good life advice, let alone career advice. So I think you could help, launch and help people step out of that. And sometimes comfort zone is not it's not a good thing. So if you're just comfortable right now and you're looking it's not about just growing at X percent. It's just, let's talk about what the next step is in your life, career, professionally, in your vision. And I love where you're headed, Dr. Rice. I love all the stuff you're doing at Ignite. And I really appreciate you coming on. And I think your story, one, has a lot more depth that we could probably get into. And I think Ignite has a whole nother story that we could get into. So we'll probably have you back on for a couple episodes. We'll probably need more content, but as we run forward. But any final parting words, and we'll kind of wrap up with the Bridge Dental podcast listeners.
And I would just say thanks so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and I love what you're doing to help people. So appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And for those of you listening, Bridge Dental Podcast listeners, I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Dr. David Rice. Check him out, Ignite DDS. Just Google his name. You'll find all types of stuff. It's up there, Ignite DDS, David Rice. We'll put his contact info in the show notes. And until the next episode, have a great day.